G'day Harbour Youth, this is Tom Batty here, looking at Hebrews chapter 3 today. I just want to show you, I wonder if I can, oh no, it's already recording, I can't flip that around, but I want to show you my location today. Look at this, isn't it gorgeous? Isn't God creative in all of his beauty? Anyway, today we are looking at Hebrews chapter 3, and I want to ask a couple of questions. I think that's all set up now. The first question is, are you going to survive as a Christian? And the second one is, how are you going to encourage others to survive as a Christian? And I guess the third question that comes out of the passage today is how many white sins are you going to be happy with? Anyway, let's read from Hebrews chapter 3 and we'll see if this works. Okay, if I bring that up closer over here. Alright. See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God, but encourage one another daily, as long as it's called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. We have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original conviction firmly to the very end. I remember when I was in year 10, there was 5 mates. We were all Christian. We went along to youth group every week. And we were so Christian that at lunchtime on one particular day of the week, we used to meet in the gym. We'd invite other people to come along with us, but nobody really came. It was just us 5. And we would open up the Bible and we'd do a little Bible study at school. And this was a state school at Gymea High. And so it was kind of weird to open the Bible in such a sense. We were on fire Christians in year 10. Year 11 came and there was a few different challenges that faced us. The big one was that all of us got our licenses and we got cars. That was really exciting, but challenging as well, because being a 17-year-old with a license, all 5 of us just wanted to do burnouts. And so I knew as a Christian at the time that this wasn't the right and appropriate thing to be doing, but it was so fun. And it wasn't hurting anyone. And especially if there was no passengers in the car, it was okay to drive in that way, to be dangerous and to break the law. Anyway, by year 12, it came to a point where I remember driving down, I was in my own on the car, wet morning, and it was at Miranda Fair, and I came around a corner, hit the gas, and just lost control entirely, and ended up kind of bumping into one of the guardrails in the middle of the road. Not huge damage to the car, but heaps of people saw it, and I just felt like a chump. And I remember coming home and reflecting upon that moment and thinking, what am I doing? Like, I'm a Christian and I'm driving like this, and it's just not right. I knew that I'd been kind of deceiving myself, so I decided I'm not going to drive like this anymore. This doesn't fit with my Christian faith. It seems wrong, and I can see what's going on here. Anyway, my 5 mates, I told them about it. Sorry, there was 5 of us, so 4 mates. I told them about it, and 3 of them, they kind of laughed at me and like, "Oh, what are you doing, Tom? Like, it's just, it's harmless. You can drive like this as long as no one's getting hurt. You can do that." Now, each of us every day are going to be faced with different challenges like this. There are white sins or sins that we think are harmless because they're not affecting anybody else, right? Just like ripping on your brother and sister, or a little bit of gossip, or maybe looking at porn when nobody's watching. Like, we know that there's lots of different they feel like little sins, but they don't affect anyone, so it's okay if I engage in them. Well, the writer to the Hebrews says, look, take care that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. Encourage one another daily so that you're not hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Sin messes us up in that it tricks us, it deceives us, it tries to tell us that this is only small, it's only little, it's not really going to have a huge effect on our life. But the reality is that these little white sins can drag us away from the living God. It might not feel like that, but that's the reality. Now the cool thing is that God doesn't just say this from his mighty throne. It's like, God saying, oh, you've got to make sure that you don't drag away. But God says this knowing what it's like to be a teenager. He came into this earth and lived with a teenager. He had annoying brothers and sisters. He had he lived with gossips. He lived with people that broke the law. He lived with chumps like you and me. And the cool thing is, he didn't just endure them and live this perfect life next to them and say, oh, you should be better like me. In the end, he died for people like you and me, who've been messed up by sin. And so we have this God who doesn't just say, look, you've got to make sure that you're not messed up and deceived by sin. He doesn't say that from his mighty throne. He says that knowing what it's like to be one of us. He lived on this earth as one of us. In Hebrews 2:14, just the chapter before, it says, since God's children have flesh and blood, he shared in their humanity, so that he might destroy the power of death. See, God says to us, make sure that we're not deceived by sin. And so the challenge is, are you prepared to listen to him? How many white sins are you going to let enter into your life? And how are you going to encourage one another daily? Are you going to last as a Christian? That's the big challenge. Do you know, after I stacked it in the car and made that call to no longer drive like that, and my friends laughed at me, 12 months later, so kind of immediately after high school, instead of there being 5 Christian mates, there was only 2. 3 of them had left the faith. They'd been deceived by sin and their hearts were hardened. What about you? Are you going to be deceived? How are you going to encourage your other Christian mates? And will you last? Will you make it to the end as a Christian?